Howdy folks, I'm P.W. Conway and I'm a cowboy poet. First I would like to thank KC LaCourse for letting me kick off National Cowboy Poetry Week with a little showcase for you all, and I hope you enjoy it. You know, I was sitting here in my office just kind of reminiscing about how I got started down the old cowboy poetry trail, and I realized that it was just 10 short years ago, when I was about 66, that I wrote my first cowboy poem. It was called Wanted Jean and Me. And it was about my old, stubborn, mean, happy mare that I had rescued a long time ago. And 10 years ago I had to put her down, and a couple of hours later I came home and I wrote this poem. We just kind of found each other, me and Wanted Jean. We was both a little lost, and I reckon we was both just a little mean. We was both a little barn sour, been penned up way too long. And without no real direction, you know, a critter can just go wrong. Like the very first time I saddled her up and she jerked me to the ground. Now the second time I held my own until she'd settled down. We'd both been down some pretty rough trail, old Wanted Jean and me. But it weren't long before we figured out that, well, we was meant to be. So we'd cross them creeks and climb them hills just to see the other side and gaze upon what God had made and be filled with humble pride. While we ride them trails from dawn to dusk, chase some cows along the way, and then we'd bunk beneath a twisted tree until the night became the day. And I'd sit there by the fire and I would tell her about my schemes. Oh, the ones that would never happen, and all the broken dreams. And she'd just keep chewing that fresh green grass, and oh, she'd whinny now and then, with big brown eyes a shining bright. That old girl was my best friend. Well, as the years rolled by, we rested more, and her trot had slowed way down. And I swear I think them stirrups was getting further from the ground. She was getting a little long in the tooth, and my hair was a turning gray. But we both still had a few trails left before we called it a day. In time we traveled flatter ground, and her flanks was a-getting thin. And I'd rub her ears and reminisce about the places that we'd been, about the sunsets on the mountain, and all the beauty that we'd seen. Oh, we had ourselves a time, me and Wanted Jean. She closed her eyes for the very last time beneath that twisted tree. Many a day it shaded us, old Wanted Jean and me. And I laid down by the fire, and I drifted off to sleep. And I dreamt of all them times we had, and all the memories I'd keep. And I saw us heading down the trail, and we were young and strong and free. And I know we'll ride again one day, old Wanted Jean and me. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. You know, I was just realizing that this is old Wanda's saddle right here. An old hardtack, high back saddle with tapaderos. Got my riata on there. This is old school. I guess so was she and so was I. But you know, it was about 6 months after I wrote that poem, my wife saw an article in the newspaper about a cowboy poetry contest at the county fair And she suggested that, well, I take my poem and go down there and enter. Well, I did, and as luck would have it, I won. And you know, I've been smitten with cowboy poetry ever since. It opened up a whole new world for me. And now, 10 years later, I'm working on my third book, and I love to share my poetry. So I could sit here and recite a couple more poems, but I think what I'd like to do is share with you all a couple of clips from past performances that I did, and I hope you enjoy them, and then I'll come back on to say goodbye. Thank you all. We'll see you in just a little bit. But anyway, I know we got some rodeo folks in here. I tried it once. Yeah, enough said about that. But anyway, I like to think of myself, I'm a pretty good old cowboy. And I can ride and rope some too. But there was just one thing that I'd never done, that I'd always wanted to do. As a young buckaroo, I never forgot the first time I seen the show. And from that day on, I always wanted to ride in the rodeo. I saw them boys on saddle broncs leaping for the sky, and I knew right then there would come a day when I'd have to try. I seen a fellow leap from his horse and bring a steer down to the ground. And many a time I wondered if I could bring one down. I seen a lot of rides and wrecks. The best cowboys come and go. And still I wondered, deep inside, if I could rodeo. Well, as the years went by, I figured out that I was running out of time. And I'd best just get her done before I'm past my prime. So I set my mind and I packed my gear and I figured I'd take a chance. And I looked up Mr. Billy T at the Bucking T-Bar Ranch. Now, Billy T had been a rodeo clown and a bullfighter extraordinaire. And he took to raising rough stock for the rodeos and county fair. Well, I told him of my schemes and dreams since that day I was a boy, about how riding in the rodeo would be my greatest joy. He said, are you sure you want to do this? Because if you really do, you're going to have to cowboy up, because I got just the bull for you. Now, old 519, he's been around, and he's as tricky as he come. But if you think you can handle him, you can ride him just for fun. Now, I know you ride horses, and you can cowboy pretty fair. But riding bulls is another thing. But I'll let you if you dare. Well, I thought to myself as I swallowed hard, it was time to do or die. So I looks old Billy right in his eyes. I says, I'll give that bull a try. So they brought him out, old 519, and they run him in the chutes. Billy handed me some spurs and had me strap him to my boots. Well, I took a breath and I climbed the gate and I sits down nice and slow. Billy says before you ride him, there's a few things you should know. He says, keep them toes pointed out and keep them heels in tight and let your free arm balance you. It'll keep you centered right. You'll come out of bucking to your left and he'll turn back into your hand and you just slide your backside to where you think he's going to land. Just ride him hard, don't look down, or you'll end up in the dirt. It ain't the ride, it's painful, son. It's the get 'em that'll hurt. Well, I tucked my chin and I yelled, let her buck. And that gate just swung out wide and I couldn't catch my breath at all, no matter how I tried. He started jumping a little bit. Well, a crow hop, some might say. He tried to get me off his back, but this was going to be my day. Yes, indeed. My free arm flopping all around and my hat flew from my head. Heck, I knew it wasn't pretty, but at least I wasn't dead. He started twisting to the left, and he turned back the other way. He started picking up the pace, but I was ready for the fray. Well, I reckon he finally had enough, and he put me on the ground, and I landed pretty hard, and Lord, it made an ugly sound. And then I seen him turn towards me. And he was big and mean and black. And my heart was in my throat as I laid there on my back. And he put his head down close to me and I could smell his evil breath. With those old black eyes staring down, God, I knew I was facing death. And then he scuffed his hoof, and he snorted. And that's when I started to pray. Then that old bull just licked my face and turned and walked away. Now Billy Steve was a laughing hard, and all the boys was a poking fun. That old bull's name was Tinkerbell, and he was as gentle as he come. But to me, he'll always be old 519, the baddest of the bad, the meanest bull that ever was, the greatest ride I ever had. So this is called the bad boy look. Says, I was sitting at the bar, as I sometimes often do, pondering the late night crowd, sipping on a brew. And that's when it hit me. I noticed an alarming trend. And the more that I noticed it, it bothered me no end. There were all these young cowboy tops, and they was standing all about, and they had 3 days worth of whiskers and their shirt tails hanging out. Except for where the buckle was, that part was tucked inside. It's like they couldn't finish getting dressed. Ain't they got no pride? So I turned to the lady next to me. I said, excuse me, ma'am, can I ask you a question? She said, I'll answer if I can. I said, what's with all these fellas? They seem to be in disarray. But the women seem to flock to them like hungry horses head for hay. She said, oh, that's the bad boy look. Yeah, it drives the young gals crazy. I took another gander. I said, but it just looks like they're lazy. She said, even though they trim it, their face has to look unshaven. And with every sideways glance, they're saying, I'm me, just misbehaving. She said, it takes a lot of work to get that unkempt look just right. I said, that just got out of bed look with them jeans that fit too tight. She said, it's really in the attitude that gets the women going. It's got to say, I just don't care. The ladies love not knowing. But then I noticed something else. They don't even comb their hair. I said, good Lord Almighty, don't these fellas even care? She said, of course they do. It's supposed to look that way. They even put in gel just to make it stay. Well, I figured, I should give this bad boy look a try. It couldn't hurt, and you never know, the wife might like it by and by. But I noticed there's a keg where my six-pack once had been. And when I moosed my hair, oh Lord, how it had thinned. But then I figured, what the heck, let's give this thing a try. It might kickstart some romance, get some sparks to fly. So I got myself all slickered up, and I snuck up behind the missus, and I snuggled up real close to her while she was doing dishes. And I said in my most manly voice, hello, darling, what you doing? She turned on me with an icy glare. I could feel the temperature cooling. She said, don't be coming up behind me with that nasty little stubble. You look like you've been in the barn or rolling in the rubble. And tuck that shirt back in your pants and go and comb your hair. She was acting real perplexed. She was giving me the stare. And then she said, what's wrong with you? What in the world do you think you're doing? I said, I'm being sexy just for you. It's romance I'm pursuing. She said, let me tell you what sexy is, just so you'll understand. It's a man who cleans the kitchen and lends a helping hand. It's a man who picks the kids up so I got time to go to the store and then helps me with the groceries when I come walking through the door. So go shave your face and comb your hair and go back to being you. And you might find out what sexy is before the night is through. I hope you enjoyed that. A couple of clips from two of my much earlier performances. You know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the best part of being a cowboy poet are all the wonderful, wonderful people that I've met along the trail. It has literally changed my life. Now I'd like to finish up with a poem that I wrote a long time ago, one of my earlier ones, called Here's to the Cowboy Life. It weren't much of a life, so some folks say, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. Pushing cows and getting dirty, I reckon it didn't look too pretty. Riding drag, fixing fence, sometimes it didn't make much sense. But the good Lord let me make my choice. On a quiet prairie I could hear his voice. He showed me mountains that glittered gold and clear blue lakes of icy cold. Eagles flying in the air. Bear cubs playing without a care. I've seen blistering days and cold winter nights. A calf being born. Barroom fights. Prairie grasses gently waving. Wolf pups in the meadows misbehaving. Well, I've seen longhorns walking single file, and they'd be stretched out for at least a mile. But it weren't all fun. There was pain and tears, like when I lost that old mare I'd had for years. She was pretty ornery when I broke her to ride, and broke my heart when she finally died. There was times she was my only friend, but at the Rainbow Bridge, we'll meet again. I'm going to miss the smell of campfire smoke, so thick that it could make you choke, with mesquite embers a-glowing bright as the morning turned from dark to light, with coffee on the coals and beans a-burning, and the smell of bacon needn't turning. But this cowboy life, truth be told, will take a young man and make him old. With the open range for a bunkhouse and a prairie for a bed, starry sky for a blanket, and a saddle for my head. I've seen it all, both bad and good, and you know I'd do it all again if only I could. So here's to all the trails that we've been on, to all the hands that have come and gone, to all the ponies we've broken rode. Yeah, and to all the times that we got throwed. Here's to all the glory and the strife. Here's to all the boys and the cowboy life. Again, thank you so much for joining me on my little trip down memory lane. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. And I'll leave you with one little quote of mine, that there are both laughter and tears in life, just as there is laughter and tears in poetry. And I hope you embrace both. God bless you all, and we'll see you down the road. Adios, my friends.